The Inside the Gamecocks, the show rolls on here on a terrible Tuesday with Ben Briner, who you may recognize from thebigspur.com as doing some
I've
game breakdowns and things like that. What you got there, JC? Well,
been as a beard.
Ben does have a beard,
I guess it's
very
been.
full, and
Oh,
I
it's
haven't.
been a minute since I saw you guys. Yeah.
yeah, been a
I
while.
haven't seen the beard. That's fantastic.
Thank you, sir.
I love
Also,
it.
I'm deeply shook by that video. I did not realize that was coming, and I am like kind of spinning from it.
I had to. I have a choice between five. I was like, what maximum impact here? I think I did pretty good on picking.
Well,
It's good work.
that's one of the best music videos of all time. I think. Sabotage. You know how they wrote the song? Like they were just sitting there one day and playing this chord, and there was this guy that they hung out with. It's kind of like their buddy that they didn't really like, that they was always starting stuff, and they just started freestyling the lyrics, and they're like, "This sounds really good." And then they made that daggum video, and it's fantastic. I mean that video, I've always wanted to be Cochise, in the video. If we actually did the full thing where we all dressed up, I would be Cochise.
Yes.
I am Tom Cruise. I remember that from anyway. Well, Ben, we want to get you on because that article you wrote was, I learned something and learned some things, and it's always good work. But sometimes following up with the writer and kind of digging a little further is good. The Gamecock offense. So give us to start with kind of your 5,000-foot view or in-depth view, since you watch the tape every week and break down the plays of what is wrong and what can be fixed, if at all it can be fixed, and kind of give us some specifics out there, because a lot of people don't know. They'll say blocking or they'll say offensive line or whatever, but it's a little more nuanced than that, isn't it?
I think so, and I think I wanted to take that sort of bigger look at the offense and say, are there certain things that are failing? Are there certain issues? And the more I kind of, especially focusing on kind of the Kentucky film, the Missouri film, because the first three games were all kind of weird in their own way. And the thing that sort of stood out was it didn't feel like the offense was maybe as far away as a lot of people might think, but it's a matter of like, how many different areas can you shore up? And what I'm talking about there is, the run blocking hasn't been good, and I don't think the running back ability to break tackles has been that good. But if you can do each of those 10%, your run game goes from something that is making people pull their hair out to something that, you can get 4 to 5 yards on a first down, you're going to feel okay. Similarly with the pass game, I did mention a little bit of the blocking because some of their perimeter blocking hasn't been great, and that kind of shuts down a lot of your efficiency screens. So, if you want to just throw the ball out to a running back on first down and you make a couple of blocks, 5-6 yards, offense starts moving, you feel good. If your tight end just can't get hands on someone, it's 2nd and 12. Life's harder. Lenoris is dropping back. And then looking at some of the Lenoris stuff, there's probably some misses he's got to clean up. He's probably got to run a little bit harder than he did, say, in that Missouri game. Now, I understand you're coming off getting hit in the head, but some years the offense is going to be able to survive that. And this year, I don't think it necessarily has enough juice around him. And something that I definitely remember happening a lot more last year was during the second half of the year, he got a little bit better at just dropping the ball off sometimes. And it feels like maybe they could use a little bit more of that. Like there are a couple plays when someone's open short and he might try to sling it into zone coverage. And again, that might just with the explosiveness being less than what it was last year without a Rocket Sanders, I think you might have to lean a little bit more into those taking bites here and there.
Yeah, I think too, teams, Coach told me over the summer, teams kind of looked at the Illinois film, with them dropping a lot, and it hadn't been happening exactly, but they teams do come in and play them to where they're like, we have to stop Sellers from running the ball. Now, when you do that, that's not always great because there's other things that should be open, especially that short to intermediate game. In theory, maybe it's not always, but in theory, that's the thing there. So yeah, I'm with you there. I think those are all pretty valid things, and they're not. I agree with you as far as like how many things can you possibly fix? But none of them are like, hey, guess what? We don't have a receiver that if you're the coach, you're like, we don't have a receiver that can run better than 4.8. That you can't fix that, right? You gotta do something else. But they're all things that really should be better and could be. I get it that with the perimeter blocking with the receivers specifically, you do have a lot of freshmen out there, some skinnier guys that probably are not going to be great at that part of it. But you also have Nick Harbor, who is pretty good. Yeah. What I noticed in your article was just a few times, Brady Hunt specifically, the tight ends were just not. They were just olaying out there.
Yeah, it hasn't been a great year tight end blocking wise, except for Brown. And obviously he's a little bit more of a fullback than anything else. And I can't remember if this was another video that was on there, but there was one play, I think it was a run play. I don't know if it made it in, where Hunt kind of had his man on one side and there was a hole for Faison to potentially be able to go in. And basically the defender managed to push him off enough to shift in and shut down this lane. And like, that's one of those things you can't really have. If you've at least got someone on one side of you as a blocker, you can't let him cross your face that badly. But yeah, I think that's definitely sort of been a part of it. And it's interesting because I kind of look at this team, and if it were a case where I thought a lot of these guys are maximizing their ability and they're just not very good, that would kind of be one thing. But it feels like a lot of these guys have more in them, have the ability to, maybe they're not going to be A+ right now, but if you can move up, half a letter grade, maybe a full letter grade, then that changes a lot, because that turns shorter gains into slightly longer gains. And I actually, as we were just talking about it, I was thinking about the offensive line in Shane's first year, which was by no account good, but in the second half you had Tyshawn Wanamaker and you had Jalen Nichols, and like they stabilized enough and the offense started to be able to move better enough, and you had some nice moments. And I think that might be sort of where you're looking, is like, can you flatten certain things out and get, see quality offensive line play, then that can start allowing Sellers to flourish more, and you can kind of empower the strongest parts of the offense.
Do you think, sticking with the run game real quick, the running backs at times this year, I think Faison's had some moments where he's been good at it, but he's also missed some holes. I think Attaway's definitely missed some holes. Fuller's kind of a just plow it straight forward guy. But, in addition to there not being blocking, I'm certainly not saying that the anemic run game is because of the running backs. I don't think that would be fair. But just like you mentioned, it's a lot of little things that add up play to play. And in my opinion, there are some times where it's blocked well, and the running back just doesn't find the hole. And in zone running, finding the cutback lane is pretty important for a running back, don't you think?
Yeah, and I think it's, I think there have been a couple of moments, but I feel like I remember, to go historical again, there was one year where Will Muschamp was kind of mad, where he was like, we are getting a hat on a hat. We need someone to break a tackle or shake someone. And I think there hasn't been enough tackle breaking and shaking someone. There hasn't been enough running through someone. There hasn't been enough, like, you hit a guy and you lean forward and that turns a 3-yard gain into a 6-yard gain. And, I might use the phrase one hand washes another, but, if you block a little better and guys start running with a little more power and getting that little extra lean, that little extra bit, you shake one safety and you pop like a 20-yard run. Those things together can start to unlock some stuff. And, that can get you to, a B- quality running game. And a B- quality running game with Lenora Sellers, you feel a lot better. And with the defense, that's honestly like almost top 20 quality. Like, you're going to start to be able to put some stuff together. And I think I remember last year, seeing this and writing about it. one big thing that changed in the middle of last year was Rocket Sanders started running really hard. And he was busting arm tackles, and he was trucking people. And he'd had it in him, but he was a little more hesitant early. And obviously, I don't think any of these guys are Rocket Sanders, because Rocket Sanders was really good. But, if they can get a little closer to that, change a few plays, have 5 better runs per game as a group, maybe 8 better runs, opportunities start to open up.
Well, that's what's the one key you think to kind of increasing that efficiency, Ben? Is it the blocking? Is it the vision? Is it, the power? What's one thing that would have the greatest impact on increasing the running game's efficiency?
I honestly think kind of the beauty of it is that there isn't one thing, that it could be any of them. And I think that's almost kind of helpful for this offense, because there's so many spots where you could say, if we shore this up, that changes X. If we shore this up, honestly, you'd love the running backs to be a little more dynamic, and that probably is the most concentrated, because it's not 5 guys trying to figure out more consistency. And the question there is just, which of these guys have what in them? Like, Faison theoretically the most talented. Is he the guy who's going to do that? Is that a case where Fuller, gains a little more confidence and kind of figures that out? I feel like Attaway kind of at this point maybe is what he is. Like, he's a hard runner, but even he could do a little better in terms of just slamming into the hole and, getting his 4 instead of a 2. But yeah, I think that it's one where any improvement you get could and will probably yield some improvement.
How important is it for Sellers to play like he did against Kentucky, where he kind of looked like his old self, in your opinion? And, if he can go for between 40 and 80 yards, that obviously boosts that rushing number up quite a bit.
I think it's vital. I think it's, if he's the runner he was against Missouri, you're in a lot of trouble, because he is their best runner. And part of being that 240 pounder is, sometimes you got to truck a corner. You got to hit a safety. And if he's not doing that, it turns that from something that's a real plus into like, you're kind of hoping it works out. And I also think that without Rocket Sanders, I think a lot of teams are saying, if you have plays that give you the choice of Sellers or someone else, a lot of defenses are just going to choose someone else. I also think, and this again depends on his recovery from the hit, I think they probably need to lean a little bit more into dedicated quarterback runs. They've done some of it, but at least to my eye, it hasn't been as consistent as it was for big chunks of last year, especially the end, when they would just say, let's put a couple pulling blockers in front of Sellers and let him go do some stuff. I think some of that's fallen out of the playbook a little bit. I'm sure they still have them. I'm sure, and they're calling some of them, but it hasn't been, to my eye, quite as much of a thing. And you might have to rely on that a little bit more, just because as the way the offense settles, you might just have to put more on the shoulders of your guy,
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree with you there. Pass game wise, yeah, the numbers haven't been super duper, but I think it is an improved receiving core. They don't really get a ton of opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Vedrivius Jacobs has been I don't want to call him a complete shock of a surprise, but I thought he had a chance, but I didn't think he'd be the leading receiver on the team. Your thoughts about that part of it? And it shocked me because Kentucky's secondary is not very good. I didn't really see Carolina running at 40 whatever times they ran it and only throwing it 14 in that game. But they did, but still an efficient 11 for 14 for Sellers.
This has been an interesting one for me, because they have been, whether by game flow or something else, they haven't run a lot of plays, and they've been very run heavy. And, coming into the season, I was kind of warning people. I was like, there's a lot of names in that receiver room, And it's kind of harder than you think to get that many receivers involved, even on like a team that throws it a lot. And now you have this team that, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think they're in the 23 passes a game maybe range. And it's, you only have so many targets. They do some pretty good stuff getting the tight ends in the flat. They like getting the running backs involved too. And so you have this weird thing where you just don't have enough receiver throws. And I think we talked a little bit on the message board about this, which some people have made an argument for a little more first down passing. And I honestly think that could be a good idea. And I think as this offense evolves, we know Shane Beamer offenses tend to shift some as seasons go on. I kind of wonder if this team might lean, maybe not be pass first, but lean a little bit more pass heavy just to see, obviously you worry a little about protection if that becomes a thing, but I'm sort of curious to see if they might end up leaning more pass heavy, because right now they're like pretty efficient. They haven't put up terrible passing numbers, I don't think, in any game particularly, but they haven't put up a lot of passing numbers either. And I kind of think that you might just have to say, you want to run the ball, but Lenora Sellers hasn't been playing bad. Maybe you just got to wing it a lot more.
Here's the thing, too. People talk about the Clemson game last year. Sellers rushed for 166 yards. Most of those were called passes. I mean, Clemson just blitzed and blitzed and blitzed, and he ran right past him. I think, Lou Holtz used to say that, one of three things can happen on a pass, and two of them are not good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to throw the ball at all. I'll just tell you that you can't be physical in the run game when you're throwing the ball all over the place. Ron Powell. Anyway. So what was I saying? Oh yeah. I meant to say that on JC Morgan this morning, Phil, that like we were talking about Arch Manning. I almost brought up Ron Powell's name. There's a good one for you. Anyway, no, I look at it, but I think with Lenora Sellers, there's four things that can happen, and two of them are good. With him and his ability to get out. Not only that, and see what you think about this. I also think it opens up downfield passing opportunities with him on the run, because when he starts to scramble, defense's eyes are in the backfield. They're like, oh my God, we got to get him on the ground. Inevitably, somebody's going to lose coverage back there, and the scramble play is going to be there. Don't you think?
Yeah, I definitely think, and I think it's been a constant evolution for him, because I actually had this conversation at the coaching clinic a couple of years ago with someone who talked about, they look for, in their words, they want a passer, not a thrower. A passer being a guy who works in system, a thrower being a guy who kind of looks really hard to make a play. And this is sort of a very high school thing, because if you're Lenora Sellers as a high school player, you could extend the play forever and someone's going to come open. And so some of that, I think, with his journey in college, is learning when to be that passer in system and when to take the most advantage. Because sometimes early last year, he would like hold the ball, looking downfield, and then he would take a 6-yard sack. And I think a lot of that is still like honing and shaping that, because once he does get out on the run, like, you're worried someone should be coming open. And I think he needs to really hone in on like developing that moment of like, all right, maybe something will come open, but I got to take these yards now. And then once you start becoming really good at that, then the defense is going to have to be like, okay, we got to take this away faster. And once you start jumping up and try to take anything away faster, something starts popping. Maybe it's a deep drag, maybe it's something real deep. But yeah, I think that stuff that gets him moving a little bit more is probably good. I haven't dug in and really like tried to break down how much they've done in terms of rollout stuff, but it definitely doesn't seem like an offense that's running a lot of like quick roll, get that speed out off like a rub route or anything.
Yeah, their stats when they do get him out of the pocket are pretty salty, but there hasn't been a whole lot of attempts. You said it was weird, and it is. Like when you look at the numbers, and it's why it's hard it sounds too positive for me to say it's hard to put your finger on what exactly they want to do, because that sounds like it's this big unpredictable. It's not. It's just hard to figure that out. When you kind of look. I mean, Kentucky, outside of Missouri, who has their issues in the secondary, Kentucky's terrible in the secondary. They ran it 48 times, dude. I don't know. But they got the win, and they got 178 rushing yards and had a 9-minute drive. What did you think of that? That was a very good thing. The coaching staff, the players are fired up about that. But I don't know. I maybe would like to have seen them score again, or something. But that amount of drive was just added to kind of the weirdness from where I sit.
So I was actually talking about that again with someone on the board, and I thought it was interesting. They were saying maybe you should throw it more. And once you're up to the level they were at, like, I don't put as much stock in like game flow stuff, because I'm not saying it's practice at that point, but it's potentially sort of practice-ish. Like, as long as you don't really mess up, Kentucky's not going to come back on you that hard. And I almost thought, and this was something I was wondering, is that a case where you just say, we are not good at running the ball, we are going to practice the ever-loving heck out of running the ball in this moment? Like, I know if you go to practice, there's a drill called inside drill, which is just like everyone but the receivers, people just pounding on each other. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I mean, I guess you got to run inside drill like 17 times against a real defense. Does that have payoff down the line? Potentially. It was a little funky. And I think some of that fits into how it's been weird to like chunk out this season, because you had Vatek that you're feeling out. You have an FCS game where you throw a lot, but it's, it seemed a little uneasy for most of it. You have Vanderbilt where you play most of the game without Lenora Sellers, and every Vanderbilt drive takes 2 hours. And then you've got this weird game against Missouri that you give up a bunch of yards and are still almost in. And then you have Kentucky that you have 2 defensive touchdowns, and the fourth quarter is just kind of out of reach. So it's for having played 5 games, it's a team that, like, the read on them, at least, especially statistically, is still very funky.
Funky is a great word. I'm of the opinion that the offensive line that they started the year with was a failure. That sounds harsh, but too many communication issues, especially at center, and Josiah hasn't played that well. I mean, I think everybody knows that. Are you, if it were you, would you go with Tree at left tackle? And I guess if Kaysen's back, Kaysen Henry will be the right tackle. Otherwise, it'll be Shivers, and then Ball and Newsome and Surratt. Is that personnel wise? It seemed like, I'm not saying they were good. Mm-hmm. Because they still, like you said, they didn't have a few but they were about a half letter grade up, in my opinion, from the other lineup.
I think that's probably fair. I tend to be a little gun shy judging offensive lines, because, like, the amount that I don't know about what people behind them are doing is always very high. I mean, I remember talking to a coach about some situation where, like, there was an offensive lineman with talent, and he would just show up every other practice and be like, don't feel like it today. And so, like, I always am like, is there something weird going on? Is there something I don't see? But the lineup you described, I think, wouldn't be definitely more talented, but wouldn't be far from that 2021 line that I talked about, where it was like, is this perfect? No, but it feels like maybe you're getting the most stability. And I don't know that Tree can bring that, because if he could, I'm kind of confused why he wasn't playing before. But if he can bring that, then, you might be just saying, can we get a C to C plus offensive line and work from there? And, that set of players doesn't sound bad to me.
I like it. Big guys, some older guys, athletic, that kind of thing. All right, quick. Gosh, this is gone by pretty fast.
That's gone quick.
Just real quick on the defense, what'd you see against Kentucky? And I know they made some slight adjustments schematically, but it seems like the light came on in the second quarter, and it looked like a really one of the better one of those good Carolina defenses again.
I think so. I think I was trying to sort of assess what this defense was compared to last year, and you had a certain set of like either really veteran or really high-end talented players that we didn't quite know what they were at the beginning of the season. Then all of a sudden you kind of got there. But like considering the insane amount of defensive line talent, linebacker depth you lost, and losing Nick in the secondary, I think this defense is quite good. Like, I think the defensive tackles are all very solid. None of them are maybe the ceiling of a TJ Sanders, but like they're all pretty good. You have two ace defensive ends at this point. Brian Thomas blossomed. Linebackers are still figuring it out, but they've been a little more disruptive than I kind of thought. I was looking at some stats over, and I was like, oh, it's a little bit better. I think they're still settling. Safety is a little funky because it's not. I don't think it's at the top. It's not as high end talented, but I think there's really good depth. So I think there's still some feeling out of like how much balance, how much do you get those two backups in there, and then corner. The number one thing I keep thinking is, what does this team look like if Judge Collier can come back? Because Cece's been really excellent, in my opinion. And I think Swain has been a little up and down. Otherwise, I think the staff maybe thinks this too, because otherwise I think he'd play basically every snap. And I think Miles Norwood, he might just be kind of a call-up fourth corner who's getting pushed into more SEC snaps than you'd like. But, I mean, I think it's pulled together quite well. The tackling against Missouri was quite atrocious, and I think they needed to fix that. But I honestly think it's like, if you're comparing it to a lot of Gamecocks defenses, I think it's pretty good. I think it's gonna suffer a little bit because people remember last year, and I don't know that people, even now, I don't know that people probably looked at the entirety of the talent that departed and really had a great sense of that group was like maybe a lot more special than we thought.
Yeah, and crazy thing is that the two guys I think they missed the most are the two guys that went out early. Two 3-star guys from South Carolina, Nick Emanware and TJ Sanders. Nick, I said during the summer that of all the people they're talking about missing on the defense, I thought they'd miss Nick the most and TJ the second most, just because you don't find freak safeties like that. And especially taller ones like him, they can get low and the run, like playing the run. People talk about his interceptions and his ability in covering the pass and things like that. And he's great. He's excellent at that. But man, from day one as a true freshman against the run, that guy was lights out, I thought. And you know, I think safeties are fine. I don't. There's just not a star back there right now. I think Gerald Kilgore's played well, and David Busey's got a good future, and you know Smith and Williams we know what they are. But that is a good point you've made. Well, Ben, man, we appreciate it.
Let's go, JC and Mad Dog Mully.